You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty.
Finally, someone gave me a word to describe the people I kept looking towards. And then I started to just take ownership and be like, I'm an advocate. When I opened up my heart for others, that's when I learned the most about myself. I think the biggest thing is learning to be an advocate for myself. That has been the hardest lesson. I'm starting to realize that when I'm just an advocate for others, it puts a strain on my body. And I think if you are not well, where are you going to get the energy consistently to care for others?
Hello there, and thank you so much for tuning in to a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, and every week we come here just to share a little bit of whatever we have going on inside. Sometimes it's me here talking, and then days like today, I actually get to bring on a special guest who just get to talk about life and their own experience. I'm so passionate about this because I've really found that the more that we share something that is true, even if it's something we've experienced, if it's just a little bit of a bigger picture, that we end up really being able to connect with other people. And that permission, that knowing we're not alone, that somebody else did it, so maybe I can do it, and hopefully will inspire you to be more encouraged, to live more authentically. And that is definitely the hope with this episode. Today, I get to welcome Stephanie Moss, a Latina third-year medical student. She is currently living in Chicago studying at Rush Medical College, and she is pursuing becoming a trauma-informed family medicine physician. And Stephanie, you'll quickly see, has just this incredible heart. She has a very unique perspective as well, being a young Latina woman in the medical industry, navigating her way. She's had experience with failure and living with stereotypes and navigating her way, dealing with imposter syndrome, feeling at times maybe not good enough or like she didn't belong. And she has really come into her own, finding her way, which is really what is at the heart of today's episode. Just a kind of peek behind the curtain of how she's managed it all, what she's learned, and some of her takeaways. So I'm very excited to share this conversation with you. Let's jump into the interview. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. It is so exciting to chat with you. I have known you for quite a long time, but I want the listeners here to be able to start to get to know you too. So I thought we could start today with a little bit of a rapid fire Q&A just to get to know you a little bit better.
That sounds great.
Okay. Where do you currently live?
I live in Chicago, Illinois.
And what brought you to Chicago?
I actually came to Chicago 3 years ago to go to medical school. Both my husband and I are at Rush Medical College.
Do you have an approximate date as to the end? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, yes, it is coming really close. So I'm about to start my third year of medical school, which is the clinical aspect, and we do 2 years of clinical. So right now I'm going to be expected to graduate with my MD in May of 2024. So I'm halfway through.
How does that make you feel?
Very excited. It's been a long road, so I'm so close.
Oh, I love that. And obviously, I think we're going to talk a lot more about that throughout today's episode. But as we continue to get to know you, you mentioned that you are married. How long have you been married for?
Yeah, we have been married for actually almost 5 years, and it's amazing that that's how I actually met you, Felicia, is you were my photographer, and how did we know you before that is you and my husband actually worked together. So it's so cool that we've known each other in different forms throughout these past 5 to 7 years.
It is such a small world. It really is.
It totally is.
And, I often think about you and I think back to the engagement session that we had together. Because remember, we had this original engagement session scheduled and it was a blizzard. We had to make that hard call of like, do we reschedule? What do we do? And we rescheduled. And it turned out even better when we actually did go up to Estes and get those beautiful I will always think of you when I think of Rocky Mountain National Park.
Oh my goodness, yes. And I remember that was actually the first time I saw moose in person. We were walking around the lake and there were just two moose just sitting there. And I remember that you said, like, I'm not usually like take pictures of animals, but you did. And that just like started the whole having animals at the engagement session and even our wedding.
Yes, I often talk about Stephanie to other brides, saying that she was like my Snow White bride because the animals just followed her everywhere. It was like there were wild turkeys, there were doves, there were elk, like there was probably even more than that. Those are the three I can think of off the top of my
Oh
head.
yeah.
Oh my God.
And the only thing we had planned for is the doves. Everything else, that was just magical. Yeah, for
It was
sure.
so magical. So yeah, so that was 5 years ago, but you and your husband have been together much longer than that, right?
Oh, yes. We actually met our senior year in high school back in Boulder, Colorado. Our senior year, we were applying to college, and we actually met at an interview for a leadership program, and we just clicked. And we ended up deciding to go to college together. We both had an interest in medicine, and we pushed each other to keep going all through college. Took a couple year gap year, both applied to medical school together, and we had the amazing privilege of being accepted to multiple medical schools and choosing our favorite.
Oh my gosh. What is it like for you to share such a passion, but also profession with your partner?
Hmm. You know what? I used to say that it's a mix. Like in college, it was really fun because we got to take the same classes and we got to study together. And at first in medical school, it was the same. However, it's been really interesting to kind of see how our paths actually have diverged quite a bit in medical school. So it's almost like we're not even in the same career anymore. He is so focused on research and that sort of medicine, and I'm so focused on patient care. So it's so interesting how, yes, we're both going to have our MD titles. Yes, we're in the same medical school, but what we want to do with our life, what our passions are just so different.
Is that something that you guys expected at the beginning of the journey, or is this like new revelations?
This is new revelations, I guess, since I do not, neither of us come from any family members in medicine, no doctors, no nurses, no nothing. So all we had was kind of we had pictures in our head of what a doctor is, that they see that people come to you, you see them 9 to 5 different times a day and you go home. So it's been really interesting to see all the different types of paths um, that you can go once you have that MD or even just medical school.
Yeah. I imagine that it has been a little bit tricky to show up for yourself in your own authentic journey when you also
Mhm.
have somebody who is on a very similar journey, who's like your closest partner, your lover, your friend, the person you're building a life with. Can you share a little bit about the path that you're taking and the ways that it may not have turned out so far how you thought it was going to?
Oh, definitely. And I think you made a good point of, since once we started diverging, even more, I already came into medical school with some sense of an imposter syndrome. I scored really low on my entrance exam. I did not have the highest GPA. Um, and there weren't a lot of Latina doctors when I was interviewing. I didn't even know a doctor who spoke Spanish living in Colorado. And so I started medical school, and a lot of my classmates were from Ivy League schools. A lot of them had parents who were doctors, and I started to definitely feel very confused with who I was, which up to that point I thought I knew who I was, but it really, going to medical school really started to shatter who I thought I was, who I thought I was going to be. And it is really interesting to kind of look back and see all the times that I broke, but then I was able to like rebuild. And I like to compare it like to building a scar. If you ever get cut, there's so much work that has to be done by your cells to regrow, and it takes many weeks. It's not immediate that your skin suddenly glues back together. It's hard work on your body. And and then it takes time, but then it doesn't grow back to just being the same skin. There's more collagen, and actually grows back stronger. That's what I call a scar. And I think that's what I started to see over and over as I started to struggle with academics in medical school, as I got to even a low point where I was considering suicide, my first year of medical school, which I hadn't ever experienced. Actually, hadn't experienced since I was little. And then I failed a couple classes. It was over and over. I kept getting beaten down, and in my in my ear, something kept whispering like, "Oh, you don't belong here." Like my husband, of course, was doing much better than me. My classmates were doing better than me. And so over and over, I kept being like, why am I here? How am I still here? But I think finally, and I say finally, as in like the past couple months, I finally started to feel that emotion of I belong here. I'm going to actually say as recent as this morning, I walked into my medical school for a doctor's appointment, and I looked up at the hospital and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be there in 2 months. I'm going to be talking with patients, and I actually belong here. And I can't tell you how much of a difference that was, um, from a couple months ago.
I feel like I gotta start wiping away my tears already.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I was hoping to have you on the podcast,
Mhm.
because you sharing a little bit about this is incredible and something that, we can all resonate with. Now, I'd like to dig a little bit more into those maybe darker moments at the
Yeah.
beginning. Can you share more about how that felt for you and what some of those thoughts were in your head, and then maybe also how did that translate in your body and you're moving through the world?
That's a really good question. And how did it look? Oh, I think this is where I really started to feel the physical pain in my body, where I started having strong headaches. I had never had migraines before, but then all of a sudden, I remember it was the first time I experienced a migraine was January of my first year of medical school, which I'm going to take note was also start right at the beginning, 2020, January 2020, COVID starting to happen. And I remember once March hit, um, all our classes started going virtual. So I wasn't sure if these headaches were related to going virtual, the very first couple sessions of Zoom, or if I didn't know what this was. And my body was just constantly drained and in pain. I had always had abdominal and stomach pains, but it became more and more severe. And originally, I went to the doctor. We have a doctor that's kind of assigned to us in medical school. That way, we don't go to someone who grades us. We have a separate doctor that all of us can go to. And she tried different medications for my migraines, but just couldn't get it. And then I started talking in the beginning of medical school. We always had therapists we could go to. And being a childhood trauma survivor, I knew that I wanted to do therapy. I had started it during college, so I wanted to continue it. And I brought kind of my physical pains to my therapist. And we started kind of like really analyzing my pain. And I think it was also in the time period we were reviewing psychology. And I was like, what would happen if I tried anxiety medications? And I had been mulling over in my head for a while, but I finally got brave and asked my therapist, and he was like, what do you think? Like, what would happen? And I went to my doctor and we found a medication that worked both headaches and anxiety. And it took a couple months, like all anxiety medications take a couple months for your body to get used to the amount of neurotransmitters. This one particularly was serotonin and norepinephrine. And I stopped having headaches. And that was the first time that I stopped having headaches and my anxiety started to kind of disappear. And that was the start of me starting to realize that I had the power to do something. Up to this point, I had just been struggling in pain for so many years, and I thought that I deserved that. I thought it was just part of life. But through medical school, I was learning that different pains are not okay. No one deserves to be in pain. It doesn't matter who you are. There's a reason you're in pain. Your body says you're in pain to try to tell you about something internal that's wrong. And whether that manifests as a mental illness or a physical illness, your body has reason. And I think that was such a key moment in my personal life to start taking a stand and realize and trying to figure out, okay, why am I in pain? And then advocating for other people through my own journey of noticing that any pains, anything that you're experiencing is not about you as a person, but it's something internal that we can help. Maybe not fix it, maybe not remove it, but there's something that can be done.
You know, pain is an indicator of something. And sometimes even just having the words around what is happening can bring a lot of relief, even if it doesn't bring a resolution or a healing. And I think that's true for a physical ailment that you're experiencing, or a trauma that you've experienced, or even just knowing more about who you are. I'm curious, how has being in medical school changed the way you feel about being a patient and about seeing patients, and the ways that you will and won't treat people based on what you've gone through?
It definitely has just expanded my empathy and opened my eyes to maybe conditions where we're taught in school are maybe not as severe, but still it has opened my mind to realize that, like, who are we to say that someone's 10 out of 10 pain is not actually 10 out of 10 pain? What matters is it's 10 out of 10 pain for them, and 10 means it's the worst and they're not okay with it anymore. And that's how we should frame it, instead of, oh, well, are you really in pain? Oh, is this some other mental thing that's causing it? Even it's a mental thing causes pain. The end result is what is pain. So how can we treat it? It's interesting because in college, I chose psychology, and I really just chose it for fun. Going through medical school, I'm starting to see how much psychology and how meaningful it is in every single specialty. So like right now, I work at a pain clinic. A lot of people come in for spinal pain and we help with injections. But it's interesting how a lot of their pain sometimes is psychological. But I have a physician who doesn't just wave them off as, yes, anxiety. They said, yes, this is anxiety. Let's do something about it. Let's get a therapist. Let's get a medication that is both for nerve pain and for mental health, because they both are one. The brain is part of the body. It is an organ just as important as a liver or heart. And that's definitely the type of physician that I strive to be, no matter if that is a psychiatrist, a family medicine doctor, or who knows. I still have a year and a half to choose, but it has definitely made me very excited to be able to see the connection in my own body and then be able to advocate and teach my peers about the importance of it so they can also treat the patient as a whole person.
Can you take us back to about a year ago where you were and the decision that you made last summer?
Yes. That was when I was supposed to start my third year of medical school. But we have this huge board exam called Step 1. And I just couldn't get that passing number. I needed 194. And I could not, on all my practice tests, I just could not do it. At this point, I had received everything my school could give me, or at least I thought. I had done the tutors, I had done the extra time. They had extended me by 2 months. And I was just at my point of, I've tried everything and I can't do it. So my administration gave me the option of take the exam and risk failing it, or taking a year off to take it when I'm ready. I ended up doing that and taking the year off. Through this, I didn't realize that I wasn't studying the 12 hours a day that my peers were. I was studying maybe 8 hours a day, maybe 1 to 2 hours dealing with my endometriosis pain, which I had recently been diagnosed, going to therapy, doing household management stuff, all of these things, and then mental health, all these things were coming up. And I was not in a physical or mental place to take that exam. I remember I was so sad and so disheartened when I had to take that year off. I was so lost. And that's when I actually I can't remember if I reached out to Felicia or Felicia reached out. It must have been like a post I saw. I don't know how it happened, but I remember so distinctly that day because you were in the midst of just my emotions I felt the lowest point.
I remember it. You made a post I saw it on Facebook, and I could just feel your pain through your words. Like I could feel that this was an impossible decision, one that you didn't necessarily want to make, but the decision that you had to make is what it felt like. And at that time, I had just started doing like natal chart readings for people with astrology. And so I reached out to you and I just said, this is going to be a huge leap for you. Like you're going to have all of this space, and maybe we could look at your natal chart and just see if there's anything there that can help support you at this time in your life. What did you think of that? What do you think of it now? And how did it impact you this last year, if it did?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's so funny because I'm a scientist. I've always been in the science. So when I always heard about people using astrology and using, those magazines, and I kind of rolled my eyes to it. I'm not going to lie. But I remember that day and I was like, you know what? What's it going to hurt? Even if she tells me I'm part dragon, I don't know, because I had no idea what it meant. It's like, it's not going to hurt me. Why not? Like, right now, I'll just take any form of comfort that I can, because there wasn't anybody that I knew that's ever taken a year off. I just felt very alone and didn't know where my place was, didn't really know who I was. And I remember meeting with you, Felicia, and it's almost like something unlocked in my heart that I didn't know was possible. I felt seen for the first time in a long time, and just for who I am. And it started getting me thinking that so many qualities that you mentioned that I did resonate with myself, you said them as a positive thing. And I think that was a big thing. A lot of the things that you had said, I had seen as a negative. They have been beaten in my head for so many years, either by my family members or by bullies, or, of these are your negative qualities. These are the reasons why people don't love you or care about you. And seeing them in this positive light allowed me to be so confident in a way I hadn't before, and be like, this is me. And I like that. It's okay. And that's kind of, it just tumbled from there of being able to take a stand on Instagram, on writing, starting to write a book of my experience with childhood trauma, and just kind of just all came together of, this is who I am. Let's explore this even more, and it's gonna be okay.
It just makes me have this huge smile on my face knowing that that could be your experience, but more so that that's where you really are right now. Like, what a beautiful, incredible thing. And it makes me, just love the word failure,
Mm,
because it's like you mentioned, it's like, if you're struggling with classes in med school, people very generally are going to be like, failure, you're a failure, you're a failure.
mm,
That word doesn't even come close to you. That word has nothing on you, because you are making such a huge difference, and you are
mm.
going to make such a huge difference in this world. I know it with every fiber of my being. And you guys will totally agree with me. If you even just read one post that Stephanie shares, you can see the waves that she is making in this world.
Thank
I'm getting
you.
emotional, but I love that you have kind of come into this deeper self acceptance. I'm curious if you can kind of maybe point to any couple moments or practices, or things you've done, like writing your book, like things that you've decided to do, or spend your time doing this past year, that have forced you to step into that authenticity to help you show up as yourself.
Definitely, I think through opening up about my challenges that I've gone through has been so meaningful. One of the times that I did was when I messaged the class below me, and I just told them that I had failed courses before. And the reason why I did that was because no one had told me it was going to be okay when I did it. I thought I was going to get kicked out of medical school, that all my years and passions were at a close. And when I opened up my heart for others, that's when I learned the most about myself. When I do upload a post where I'm being vulnerable, I'm being myself. And I get so excited and nervous because I'm so, my trauma response is so ready to shut it down immediately, because I know that people are going to think that I'm a bad person, or just these horrible sentences that were beat into my head growing up. But I haven't received that negative response. Yeah, of course, I've had sometimes some negative, but like overall, it's been relatively positive. I've had students come to me, text me, I just failed an exam. What do I do? Or, oh, I'm thinking of taking a leave of absence. Thank you for the post. Can we talk? And just that has made me feel like I have a purpose. That's why I get into these ridiculous things that I do so much. People ask me how I do them. I don't know how I do all this. This is part trauma response, part just me of showing up and learning about myself through sharing with others.
You are a huge advocate, and I can see that in you, this person that it doesn't even matter if you do or don't have energy for it. Like, you're just going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Like, you definitely
Mhm.
have this, I don't know if it's just a moral compass or if it's just a Stephanie compass that says this is true north, and I'm going regardless of how
Mm,
hard the path in front of me is. Um,
mhm.
but the word advocate is one that I easily associate with you. Can you share a little bit about what that word means to you right now, and how it has maybe shaped you at all?
Yeah. I didn't even know of the word advocate until a couple of years ago. I think I first heard it when someone described one of the physicians that I look up to. He's my current mentor, but someone said, "Oh, he's a huge advocate for the African Americans and low income people in Chicago." And I was like, that's what I admire. Finally, someone gave me a word to describe the people I kept looking towards. And then I started to just take ownership and be like, I'm an advocate. Because like you said, I throughout my life in high school and college, I'd been doing things, doing projects and stuff, and I was not not with like a direct purpose. I just like you said, it felt like the right thing for me to do at that moment. But now I'm being very purposeful. Being very and I think that's what's changed a lot, especially this past year of now that I have a little bit of more of the time to take a breath, to analyze by being on my leave of absence. I've been actually looking at, okay, what do I want to what do I who do I want to advocate for? What population? Whether if that is um, low income people, what if that is people who are dealing with pelvic pain, whether if that's people who are anxious, whatever that is, or even homeless. I was doing a lot of homeless work during COVID. Um, but being very purposeful, like I'm an advocate. What does an advocate do? And just fitting into that role, but not putting a mask that I'm an advocate. And I felt like that's what I was in the past. I felt like I was wearing a mask that just didn't fit right. I was trying to be authentic, but then I wasn't. But this is my skin. This is not a mask. And I think that's where I fully have taken on that as wherever I am in my life, I'm an advocate.
It's a word that a lot of people pretend to be, but you embraced it before you even knew it was the word. And I think that that's really incredible right now. And it makes me wonder, does it change how you see yourself in the future? Or has it changed the path that you know you're on?
I should say definitely. The types of physicians and types of individuals I'm seeing in the world that I look up to, they were advocates. I remember reading Michelle Obama's book right before I went to medical school. And there was something that I connected with both her and President Obama so much, saying, how can I help you? Or what are the issues you are experiencing? Versus coming in with, oh, I know what problem you're having, and this is how I'm going to fix it. But really, President Obama, before he was the senator, before he was the president, he was in Chicago, and he went to those church meetings and just sat listening to people talking about what was needed in their communities. Through reading that book, it's allowed me to not just jump in and push myself into situations I think need my help, but just people like to share their pains that they're dealing with. And I think what's important is just listening to those and being like, no, you don't deserve to be having that negative experience. What can we do to change it? And that goes into being a doctor of now people are coming. One of my favorite sentences I recently a couple of years ago learned from another physician is saying, what is the most important thing that you would like to discuss? Or why are you here today? Instead of the doctor saying, oh, you are here for this, you're here for meds, and then moving on with their life, just being like, what is most important to you right down in this moment? Even if I can't do anything, maybe it's just listening to what you're going through and then being a resource.
Absolutely. I think listening is a huge skill, one that is not really valued in our culture. And one that is so important. You know, I was sharing with you a little bit before we started recording just what I've been going through with Dave with his health, and the difference that he felt after an hour-long appointment with a doctor who listened to him. I mean, there's a lot we could say about the whys of the shorter appointments or doctors walking in and telling you what you have instead of listening to where you're at. But I don't know that it's possible to find healing without being able to speak. You know what I mean? Like healing is something that we're all doing, whether we're, like you mentioned, like healing something physically going on with us, or if it's a metaphysical thing or an emotional thing. it is all one thing. Like we are a
Mhm.
human in a body having an experience, our brain, our soul, our spirit, it's all connected.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm curious, because you have had experience working with patients and you work in a pain clinic and stuff, and you do a lot of work with underprivileged communities and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about just your experience in doing that work and how people see you and how you want them to see you and how you want to make a change or a shift there?
Yeah. I started laughing because the first time I started working with patients was my freshman year of college. I got my EMT. I didn't. I applied to all the hospitals and ambulances, and they didn't accept me because Colorado has an overabundance of EMTs. And I remember my husband told me to apply to a nursing home. And I was like, "Oh no, I'm not going to work with old people. I'm scared of them. No." And I did it, and I just fell in love with these individuals who had gone through so much, and all they needed was someone to be there and listen. And I think that's where I started to develop all these skills of listening and doing simple stuff, listening while I'm putting on their stockings, their support stockings, or while making their bed or giving them their medication, answering their questions about their fears or concerns. And the reason the laughing came in is because so many times when I started to say like what I was in school for was to be a doctor, so many people laughed and being like, "Oh yeah, yeah, honey," or like, "Oh, are you sure you don't want to do a nurse?" Or "Are you sure you want to do all that work? Like, what about kids?" Or even before I even told them I was in school, they would assume I had kids at home, or and it started opening my mind, sexism and racism. It really, it's interesting to now continue to sometimes still hear it, even in the pain clinic, the wide eyes people get when I say I'm a medical student. And I know I'll continue to get those surprises. I have so many mentors that have stated, "Where's the doctor? I am your doctor." Whether if that they are females or just minority physicians, because it's abnormal. People can't help it because it really is true. There is only 5% African American physicians, and then half of that are women. And then again, 5% are Hispanic or Latinos, and then half of that. So I'm going to become part of the 2.5% of physicians. So it makes sense. They're not everyone's trying to be like that. Like they're doing from what they've seen, and I can't blame them because I was the same way. I had never seen a female Latina until I came, till I had one instructor who was like that in my school. It's definitely opened my eyes quite a bit and encouraged me to definitely say it with pride and take ownership. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a nurse. I am a medical student. And also, I've been doing a lot of working with like high school students, show them that they can go into medicine, they can do things. I'm a living example, a struggling living example, but still an example.
I love that you just said, a struggling example, because that's, one of the reasons that I do this podcast is because more often than not, when I come to sit down at this microphone, I am struggling with something. Not that I think that struggle has to be a part of life, but I do think that it is something that we all face. We all have moments where we feel like we don't have our shit together, or we all feel like we aren't showing up how we wanted to, or we're going through things that we didn't expect. Like we're all thrown curveballs.
Mm-hmm.
And that might feel on the outside or be called by others failure. Maybe it's just
Mm-hmm.
us living our life the way that we were supposed to learn what we needed to
Mm-hmm.
learn to be who we're supposed to be. As we start to wrap this up, I mean, we could obviously talk all day, but one question I have for you is, and you have full permission to change your mind on this, right? Like you're not stuck with anything that you say, but right now, from the chair you're sitting in, what kind of future do you want for yourself? Like, where do you see yourself ending up in 5, 10 years?
It's interesting how it changes. That's okay. Yeah. As a young kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. And that continued until I think middle school. I wanted to be a scientist. I didn't know what kind. I think I was going to be a biologist. So I did a lot of science fair projects that were biology based. Wasn't until I started getting my ENT was physician, but I didn't know what type of physician because I thought there was only one type. And then going through my journey the past 3 years, I think I think what it's going to turn into is I've met a couple physicians that kind of do two things. They see patients, and the other part time they run a nonprofit or they run a huge organization. And it seems that I just keep doing that no matter where I go. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I've really become passionate about the concept of interprofessional care because I myself have benefited from it and I see the benefit for other chronic medical conditions, particularly people who have been through traumas, whether if that is traumas as childhood or veteran traumas in war or even COVID traumas, because that's a real thing. I really hope to make a interprofessional trauma clinic where we're having psychologists, psychiatrists, movement instructors, so fitness instructors. That's actually another thing I'm doing right now is I teach somatic movement, Zumbas and stuff like that. But all together in one place to break down that barrier, whether if that is social, economical, can't go to multiple appointments, can't take multiple appointments off of work, whether if that is communication, medical based, because we're not good with communicating between different types of hospital systems, all working with each other. That is kind of my thoughts of what I think my life is going to look like.
I think that is so true to something I could see happening for you. And it will be so fun to listen back to this in the future. And, I'm sure that life will continue to shape the path that you're on. Is there anything else? I love to always ask, like, is there anything else that you'd like to share a bit from within about taking off that mask, about the authenticity that you found or your resiliency?
I think I would like to say, I feel like it's a cliche, but for once I'm actually feeling it, is that you are who you are and it is beautiful. It doesn't matter what imperfections you think it is or what problems or what disorders or whatever you went through, you are beautiful inside and out, and you deserve to be here. You deserve to receive love, even if it's not the love that you've received in the past. You deserve it. You deserve to not be in pain. I sometimes have to repeat that to myself whenever I am in physical pain and I start going down the track of, oh, I deserve that. Oh, it's because I didn't do X, Y, or Z. But be like, no, I don't deserve this. And actually doing something. I think the biggest thing is learning to be an advocate for myself. That has been the hardest lesson, is now flipping it and being an advocate for me instead of just the other world, because I'm starting to realize that when I'm just an advocate for others, it puts a strain on my body. And I think we've all, especially healthcare providers or anyone who's taking care of others during the pandemic, whether if you're a caregiver or anyone, if you are not well, then how in the world, where are you gonna get the energy consistently to care for others?
It brings me back to that quote that says, like, you can't really love somebody else until you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is true with so many of the things that we aspire to be. It's like, for me, every time I go to, the whiteboard and try to brainstorm, like, who am I trying to help? What am I trying to help them with?
Mm.
And I'm thinking about self-care, and I'm thinking about that deep permission to be who you are and how to be more gentle and meet yourself where you are. These are things that I am so passionate about. And it is so much easier to initially take that pathway and just direct it towards other people. Like you said, it's so much easier for us to be like, have that really tiny voice inside that's like, you need to be an advocate for yourself. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to be an advocate for this person and this person. And you try to do that external way of expressing it. But the truth is like, when you learn to be an advocate for yourself, you can be an amazing advocate for other people if you can do that for yourself, but you have to do it for yourself first. And you can't teach people something that you don't live for you. So sometimes for those of us who, we're on the journey, where those brave people being called to take the leaps and to be those people, it's hard work, because we have to show up for ourselves. We can't just go through the motions. Well, gosh, I love that so much. And I wish I could talk to you all day. We'll definitely have to do a part 2 at some point. Just there's so many things I want to pick your brain on, but I think it's okay that we end that here today. One way that I love to end every podcast episode is to shuffle a deck of cards. This is a deck on, it's like love. It's called Affirmators. It's 11 relationships deck. And each card has just a different little saying on it, a different little thought. And we'll just pull a random card and see how it might add a little bit of something to our conversation to wrap it up. How does that sound?
I love that. Yeah,
cool.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. This is the card. I'll read it to you. It says, honesty. This heralds a wonderful time of rooting yourself in complete and total honesty. It might seem scary to tell the truth all the time, with everyone, about everything. But when you can practice radical honesty, you can stop hiding and start relaxing. The best part is honesty from you inspires honesty from others. What results in rooting tootin' trust parade, and everyone's invited. Wow. What do you think about that card pull?
That's perfect. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The heavens they're always aligned. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, totally. I feel like, we love those. We're talking about taking off the mask and being authentic, and what is authenticity without honesty? Like that is that those two words are so deeply connected. And I love it. And I love who you are, and that you are somebody who is so honest and who continues to fight to be transparent and vulnerable. So, Stephanie, if you can kind of give people all of the ways that they can stay connected with you, and kind of just what you're up to, what we can keep our eyes open for that you're working on.
Yeah. Since, like you said, I'm everywhere. So I've tried to stay consistent with the website and tags of MED, Psych, PSYC, Moss, which is my last name, MOSS. So Med Psych Moss. So it's medpsychmoss.com, and then MedPsych Moss on Instagram, on YouTube, on Twitter. And what I really am excited for my website that I've been building, I've been being an advocate for both patients and providers. So providing resources and education for people who are dealing with similar health conditions, whether that is pelvic pain, infertility, endometriosis, but also going with the mental health side of things of that I suffer with anxiety, and but then also bringing things from to teach trauma-informed medicine to my peers. So yeah, Med Psych Moss.
Absolutely, go follow her. She's always writing incredible things, and she's very transparent and honest. So
Thank you.
I will link to all of those things in the show notes so that people can easily find you. Just thank you so much, Stephanie, and until
Thank
next time.
you.
Thank you again for tuning into today's episode. It was so much fun to have this conversation with Stephanie, and I hope that it inspired you and resonated with a little bit from within you. If you loved this conversation and you'd like more encouragement to be who you are, to be gentle with yourself, to remember that you've got a lot more going for you than sometimes it feels like, then I absolutely encourage you to listen to more episodes of our A Bit From Within podcast. New episodes drop every single Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And of course, if you really love the work that I'm doing, you can become a supporter, a monthly subscriber through Patreon, where for $3 a month, you can get ad-free episodes of the podcast. We have a bunch of different tiers that include different things like guided meditations, yoga, including live yoga classes. So if you want to check that out, visit patreon.com/abitfromwithin. And of course, there is definitely plenty of free content, especially on my website, where there's plenty of blogs that will support you with your self-care, including inspiration via using the lunar cycles. So if you're interested in that at all, visit abitfromwithin.com. And of course, you could always find me on Instagram or TikTok as well. You can find me on Instagram at abitfromwithin or on TikTok at Felicia Marty. It has been a joy to share this hour with you, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.